Pedagogical practices in local schools through a social culture perspective. Sociocultural teaching and learning is based on the premise that individuals learn through social interactions and contexts. Individuals use and share their funds of knowledge with others in order to have an active part in their learning. Vygotsky viewed learning and development as dynamic, social, cultural, and historical by nature, and in a dialectical relationship with each other. Wink and Putney, 2002. On this slide, I have provided a photo taken from my own classroom. As an educator, I do believe in collaborative work and using the social culture perspective to help children understand the content and get them ready for the next grade level. All of the examples in this in this keynote presentation will be taken directly from my own classroom and from James Pace High School. So one pedagogical practice that is through the social culture perspective is think, pair, share. This activity is done all across my campus, and I'm sure in many campuses across the state. So in think, pair, share, students are provided with perhaps a topic or an issue to consider and to reflect on individually. So in my particular classroom, this past semester, I asked students to think about what were some issues with present-day society. After they get some time to think about it individually, they are to partner up with somebody and share their response. As you can see this picture on the bottom left-hand corner, I gave students Play-Doh to sculpt together to kind of bring together what they thought were some issues in present-day society. And then from this photo, it is a photo of a firearm and a girl. And my students, after discussing with each other, they came up with gun violence in school and mass shootings. So that is one topic that they decided to focus on as it pertained to issues in society. And this think, pair, share activity allowed them to reflect on their own funds of knowledge, come together to collaborate and share and discuss their ideas. And ultimately, at the end of the class, not at the end of the class period, but at the end of the activity as a whole class, my students were required to discuss and share their ideas. So through Vygotsky's social culture perspective, students are sharing their funds of knowledge and helping each other move through the zone of proximal development. This next activity that I enjoy using in my classroom a lot is peer editing for the writing process. So after students have written their complete rough drafts, I like to get them I like to put them with partners, and I like to have them provide constructive criticism. So in this activity, students use their knowledge, so their funds of knowledge, of spelling, grammar, and syntax to determine revisions and corrections needed that their partner needs to make. Students maintain a positive attitude and share positive aspects and suggest improvements for their peer. Peer editing allows for students to learn from each other and improve on the writing. So in this activity, I always make sure to have perhaps my strong writers with other strong writers so that they both are able to get something out of the activity. It is sometimes difficult to find two very strong writers that they can get feedback from because they were already at maybe where their grade level requires them to be. And when it comes to my struggling writers, I like to pair them up with someone that is a little bit better than they are. And I have my top writers help as well so that these kids are moving up the zone of proximal development. So through the social culture perspective, we understand that learning and development is seen in relationship to others in our lives. So we learn from each other and we learn from the people around us. Teacher learns from students, students learn from other students, students learn from teacher. And the connections we make ultimately influence the choices we make. So an activity such as peer editing is an example of a pedagogical practice through the social culture perspective. Vygotsky suggested that teaching meant relating to the students and curriculum to their lives. With that said, this last example, collaborative group work, is an activity that I use in my own classroom. Practice writing using the 3 types of third-person point of view. So for this activity, I have students arrange themselves into groups of 4, and I provide them with a picture of, let's say, a picture taken from a newspaper, from a magazine. It has to be a picture that sparks their interest. In the past, I've used a picture of SpongeBob dressed as a ghost for a Halloween party. So once you provide the students with a picture, you give them their journal and they divide it into 4 separate sections. Okay. For this particular activity, we only use 3 of the sections. So for third person objective, third person limited, and third person omniscient. And working together, the students have to come up with a little story for the picture, practicing the third person narration. So say, for example, they're using the third person objective. Sometimes a student will forget that you are not allowed to go into the mind of the character, and you're not able to see the feelings expressed, and it's all action. So for this particular activity, why it encompasses the social culture perspective is because it requires students to share their funds of knowledge. They learn from each other, they collaborate, and in an activity like this, they do correct each other, because you have students that want to include those thoughts and feelings of a character, and then you will have another student understand that objective only means action. So this activity is a popular activity that we use at my campus because it gets students to learn from each other and to correct each other when it comes to practicing determining the POV. So this activity is great because they get very excited about this activity. They get to work in groups. A lot of our students enjoy working together because they learn from each other. And ultimately, when it comes time to assess them, they do very well. And I strongly believe it's because of this scaffolding activity and just letting them socialize. So if learning and development is seen in relationships with each other, then this kind of activity supports that, and it supports the social culture perspective.